All right, good Monday. Welcome to the Sean Spicer Show. I hope you had a good weekend. Today is 9/11. It is the 22nd remembrance of that fateful day when earlier in the morning, planes struck the Twin Towers and then a heroic group of Americans sacrificed their lives, took down a plane that landed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It's been an interesting 22 years since that day, and we're going to talk about where we've come since then. Are we a safer country? Are we doing what's necessary to root out evil and protect? Do enough people remember 9/11? We're going to break that down a little bit later in the show because I think we need to do our part to never forget. But there's a lot more going on, a lot happening in Washington and in the world of politics that we need to get to. The biggest thing I think right now is this idea of Trump versus Biden. Everyone keeps saying it's Trump versus Biden, but then on each side, there are forces trying to tear that equation apart. Folks on the left using this 14th Amendment, third clause in there, to potentially restrict Donald Trump from even getting on the ballot. And then on the left, over and over again, calls that Joe Biden's not ready to continue to be president. In fact, Kamala Harris in an interview this weekend reiterated that she's ready to take over, but he doesn't need it. We'll break that all down. Nancy Pelosi also announcing that in her 80s, she will be seeking re-election. Why? I don't know. And here's the other fun thing. We talked last week about Anthony Fauci and the word salad that he had on Smirkani's show on CNN. Well, guess what? This weekend, number one, he was back on the airways getting a softball chance to make up, but also Smirkanish on CNN played what we had to say about it. We'll get to that in a little bit. But as I mentioned a little later in the show, we're going to talk to a guy on Instagram who goes by Veteran with a Sign. His name is Zach Bell. He is a Afghanistan veteran, and he's going to talk to us about how far we've come since that war, the sacrifice that so many have made. All right, let's get into it. All right, guys, I know it's been a long weekend, so do me a favor. If you haven't already, take a second and make sure you're subscribing all over the place. I appreciate it. We are continuing to grow, and it's because of you, so thank you for that. I appreciate everybody who's sharing the show. Anyway, a lot to get to today, so I don't want to bore you with that. But for those of you who are subscribing on YouTube and Rumble and Apple, it's helpful. That's where everyone looks to see if we're growing, and we're doing a great job. Thank you for that. Man, Biden just continues to have a horrible weekend. Maybe it's because he's not working and he's taken like 18 vacations. He had to take a vacation from his vacation. But he gets these poll numbers that continue to come in showing that his own party's not with him. I want to lay out for you, though, my prediction as to where this thing goes. Because everyone keeps talking about, well, this one's going to get substituted in. Listen, just mark this down, save this episode, write it down, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to lay this out for you. I wrote a book about a year and a half ago called Radical Nation. And you have to understand what Biden's really trying to do. He wants to become the most progressive president ever. And he knows he's not doing it through accomplishment, right? Inflation's through the roof. Foreign policy's a mess. The military is facing shortages. I mean, wherever you turn, even Biden said in that interview with David Muir, wherever you go, when you turn on the TV, things aren't going well. So he's not going to become the most progressive president through accomplishment. He's going to become the most progressive president through appointments. Appointing the first gay cabinet member, Pete Buttigieg, not qualified, but doing the first 4-star person to lead whatever that person over at HHS. They're not qualified. They don't talk about their accomplishments and their experience. They talk about what box they're checking. So that in the future, every future left-wing administration is going to point to Biden as the progressive North Star and say, if you want to be more progressive, you know, he's sort of, this is like the new way to show how leftist you are. Then you need to appoint 2 of them. You need to appoint 3. He appointed the first black female vice president. He never talks about her experience, does he? How great she is, how much she accomplished. She dropped out before the Iowa caucuses. Her own party didn't like her. She's never pointed to her accomplishments. I mean, Biden could say he'd been in the Senate. He was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. That's why Obama needed him to fill this void. She didn't fill a void. She checked a box. He said it. I want to pick a female black person. He didn't say I want to pick the most qualified person that could step in and be president. So here's where I'm going with this. Biden believes that his legacy, beyond what he's done already, appointing all these people who aren't qualified, but that he can say he's done it. First gay this, first transgender this, first female to lead this, first person of color. It's always the first, or, because that's his measure, his bar of accomplishment. Most people talk about jobs, things that they've done to advance America, make the country better. Nope, this is the new yardstick for him. So here's what's going to happen. He believes that he's the only guy that can beat Trump, which clearly the polls show is not the case right now. I think almost every Republican in that Wall Street Journal poll either can beat him or is within the margin of error. He believes he's going to run and win, and then he will step down, and Kamala Harris will be the president without a single vote having been cast for her. Mark my word, write this one down. That's what's going to happen. Gavin Newsom was out this weekend. He was on Meet the Press. We'll talk about that in a little later. But he said, quite frankly, the filing deadlines are coming. This is how it's going to. So all this talk about Michelle Obama and all this, I'm sorry, guys. I've said this from the get-go of this show. The rules matter. And the rules are that you can't put somebody in. Filing deadlines occur, and that's how it's going to happen. They're going to pass. Even Gavin Newsom, who's dying to be president, realizes it's not going to happen. She will become president because, and this is only if, so don't get me wrong. This is the thinking. I'm not telling you this is how it's going to happen. This is their thought process. Biden's going to be able to say, I allowed the first female to become president. Because then it'll be him stepping down and handing it to her. But mark my word, all this Michelle Obama stuff, if someone tells you that Michelle Obama is going to be the nominee, they're a stupid person. I'm sorry. She's not running. She doesn't have an apparatus. She doesn't want the job. You have to be able to get the delegates. Those are the rules. And even Gavin Newsom says he can't do it. Now, I think he wants it, but there's no way unless there was an open primary, and there's not. Trust me on this. All of these people who tell you about these other plans don't understand the rules of the game. It's just not going to happen. The only way this works is the way I explained. He steps down after he, quote unquote, wins and hands it to her. Now that, of course, again, presumes that he wins. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the American people understand what's at stake and are seeing the country. But she was asked over and over again this weekend, is she ready to assume the presidency? And she said yes. The thing that was so interesting, going back to resumes, Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation asked her about these attacks, saying the only reason people want Biden to stay president is because of her. She started listing off all these things that the administration has done. And Margaret Brennan says, well, they're criticizing you, Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris then ticks off her resume. She was like, I was DA. I was the Attorney General of California and reelected. And I was, a United States Senator. That's your resume. That's great. That doesn't mean you're good. Doesn't mean you're qualified. Doesn't mean people have faith in you. I'm just telling you, that's what's going down. Speaking of the Sunday shows, Fauci, as you recall, last Saturday was on Michael Smerconius' show. I gave Smerconius credit for having him on and holding his feet to the fire, asking him about this Cochrane study that says masks don't work. So Smerconius actually has a clip of us on there, and I thought that was great. We get the credit for acknowledging what was happening, but Fauci went back out there. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. But before I do, speaking of doctors and health, let me tell you a little bit about what's going on inside a lot of our livers right now, because more than ever, there's a lot of concern in the medical community about liver health. And the latest data from the American Heart Association indicates that adults with fatty livers, I mean, I know you can't see it, but this is what they're concerned about. If you have a fatty liver, you're 3.5 times more likely to have heart failure than if you don't. So obviously this is a big deal because heart failure is one of the biggest reasons that we're dying in this country. And the American Liver Foundation says that 100 million Americans have fatty liver, means that many of us probably are living with this and we don't know that. You think about it, cholesterol, alcohol, toxins, statins, people who have smoked, that's all contributing to these fatty livers. And it has to do with, I think for a lot of us, why we gain weight, why we lose energy. And for decades, your liver is helped with hundreds of functions. There is, however, a solution right now, Liver Health Formula. It's an all-natural supplement which contains 12 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. It is manufactured here in the U.S. Over 2 bottles of Liver Health Formula have already been sold. So you can try Liver Health Formula and get a free bottle of omega-3 to help keep your heart healthy. Go to getliverhelp.com/Spicer, getliverhelp.com/Spicer, and claim your free bonus gift. All right. I want to get back to Fauci because we're talking about health. So Smerconish now brings on this guy, Dr. Tom Jefferson. He's an epidemiologist and is the first author of the Cochrane study. And this is what he says on Smerconish. He says, it's more likely than not that they don't work, meaning masks. I tweeted about this. This guy's an actual epidemiologist. Fauci is not. Fauci then goes on ABC with third string backup host John Carl and gets this like softball treatment. Literally, these clips have gone viral. And this is what Smerconish had been playing, where he's showing how much coverage his interview with Fauci had gotten. And John Carl basically says, excuse me, doc. There's some questions about this study. No, there's not. The doctor had been on a day before and said this on Smerconish's show, had said exactly what I said, that more likely than not, they don't work. And does Carl ask a question? No, you cannot question Lord Fauci. Must give him a pass. But it was interesting when Fauci was asked about potential future lockdowns and things like that. Do you know what Fauci said? It's everybody's choice. I don't want to It's amazing how he shifted. He's like Joe Biden on Hunter Biden. They just switch their language and hope that nobody notices. Jonathan, it's a choice. Yeah, No, it was never a choice. Before, we were idiots. Remember, we were stupid. We were selfish if we didn't wear a mask. If we didn't shut everything down. Now, suddenly, Fauci's on the, it just depends bandwagon. It's amazing how it all changed. And again, he gets away with it. No accountability. He's the one who tells us over and over again that these studies are conclusive, that there's no way, and it's not true. The Cochrane study says it. And we see it over and over again, and yet nothing ever happens to hold this guy accountable. Because they want him at their dinners, they want him as a guest. They don't want to question it. And it's unbelievable. That's what happens on the left. This is the pass that they get. I mentioned before, by the way, that Kamala Harris was on CBS's Face the Nation. And she was asked about the border and the root causes. And she's going off about climate change. Extreme weather is apparently a big cause. That was what she was going off on. And yet, Mayor Adams, the Democratic progressive mayor of New York City, says, this is a quote, that the cost of migrants will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City. Not to mention, this is a guy who welcomed folks to New York. It's amazing how when these blue states suddenly feel the pain that places like Texas and Arizona have felt for years, it's a crisis. It'll break a city. It'll break a city. What do you think's happening in Texas, in Arizona? Breaking houses, communities, businesses. Suddenly we care because Mayor Adams, but she gets away with nothing. They don't hold any of these people accountable. And she starts going off about random policies. These are Democrats who are saying that enough's enough. They can't handle it. It's just amazing what they get away with. And I think that the whole point of this is a reminder about why we're here. Talked to Dave Rubin on Friday about independent media. This is amazing. Fauci literally has goes on a word salad about individual and masked and blah, blah, blah. Smirkanish lets him off the hook last Saturday. Then he comes back in on Sunday. And Jonathan Karl plays Ring Around the Rosie with the guy. What's your job? That's what you're supposed to be doing. It's unbelievable. Sticking with my Sunday show theme, by the way, it was Chuck Todd's last show, and I'm going to get to that in just a sec. But I do want to tell you, as you know, about an organization that has been super helpful and supportive of the show, but does great work. Delta Rescue is on a lifelong mission to care about animals that are saved from the wilderness, that have been abandoned, dogs, cats, horses. You all know how sad it is to see some of those things. And I've said this before. So many people bought pets during COVID because they thought it would be great that they would be home and they could take care of this pet. They have to go back to work. They realize it's not as easy. And they're abandoning them. Delta Rescue is literally coming to the rescue. They are the largest care for animal sanctuary in the world. It's not ordinary. If you're familiar, if you've rescued pets in the past, dogs, cats, whatever, you know how important it is to go when you go to a shelter. Sometimes some of them don't have the capacity to care for them, and they're kill shelters. They euthanize these dogs. Delta Rescue is a no-kill shelter. This is their goal. They raise money to make sure that dogs get the veterinary care, the nutrition, all of the other things to keep these dogs happy and healthy going forward for the rest of their lives. But they rely entirely on us, on our contributions to do the great work that they're doing. So if you can help, no donation is too small, $5, $10, whatever, 100, 1,000 if you can. These are the people who do the work so that we don't have to, so that, fewer dogs are being euthanized. So please take some time, go to Delta Rescue, read about the great work that they do, sign up for the newsletter. Please make a contribution, help it. You won't regret it. DeltaRescue.org. All right. Before I get to that last Sunday show thing on Chuck Todd, I do want to talk to you about the 14th Amendment. We were literally at the forefront of this issue. Because I saw the chatter coming up online. And I was like, okay, I've started to see the pattern. And it's not just the Trump, right? Think about pronouns, all this other stuff. You start seeing things and we smirk and we laugh at it. This is so ridiculous and silly. 3 months go by, 6 months go by, and then suddenly it's against the law if you don't abide by this. You're going to get ostracized. You didn't call me my gender fluid pronouns. You didn't abide by this. You didn't say this on COVID. Whatever it is, this is how these things work. And look at what's happening on the 14th Amendment. Section 3 that we've talked about, we were out there with Dershowitz talking about how ridiculous this is. And Alan Dershowitz, a liberal leftist who has never voted for Trump, said it would be an illegitimate election if they took him off the ballot. But Colorado, now examining it. I told you early on, New Hampshire was looking at it. Michigan, now Colorado. There's this big UPenn study coming that is trying to make the case. Now, remember, Trump hasn't been charged with insurrection. Frankly, I don't even know that anybody involved in January 6th. To my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I know, no one's been charged with insurrection. Nobody. So you're going to say that this clause in the Constitution involving people during the Civil War now applies to a guy who hasn't been convicted of a single thing? You may not like Trump. You may totally, but you can't just willy-nilly do this. But remember, this is what they did in 2000. This is what I'm saying. I've seen the movie. They used COVID and said, oh, we can have a drop box there. We'll mail everybody a ballot. We don't have to abide by the rules anymore. We'll make it up as we go because it's for a greater good. That's what they all say, the journalists, the folks on the left. As long as they believe that it's for a greater good, whatever that good, as long as it's their greater good, we're all good. That's what they're doing. They did it in 2000, and this is the new version. Well, we tried COVID. We did this. Remember, Trump only lost the presidency, if you look electorally, by about 45,000 votes in a few states. That's how close this was. And I told you, go back to 2016, you think of Michigan, 10,000 votes. Boom. this is what they're doing now. It's if we can't stop them, they don't like it being this close. So what are they going to do? They're just going to take him off the ballot. This is gaining steam. Trust me. I thought it was silly at first. You've got to be kidding me. You can't just take somebody off the ballot. And here we are, state after state after state, having a discussion about just taking him off because he was involved in an insurrection. You think the media is going to come to his defense? No. Wake up, folks. We need to get ahead of this. So, I mean, the thing that was interesting is you are seeing more and more folks come out on the left and even some academics on the right who don't like Trump. But Brad Raffensperger, who is the Secretary of State in Georgia, wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. And he even says that this is not how we should govern. Let the people decide. This is a democracy. Once we start taking choices away, we're no better than a dictator. But if Raffensperger knows this, I just, again, it feels like anything that's in pursuit of stopping Trump is okay. It doesn't matter what you do. As long as you're stopping Donald Trump, you can do anything you want. No norm, no law, no policy is worthy of not being broken if it's in pursuit of that greater good that you believe. This is the left's mentality. I'm just telling you over and over again. We're watching this happen in front of our faces. And you go, there's no way. There's a way. Trust me. They're going to find one state. You know, Colorado seems pretty ripe for this right now. And they're going to say, well, the House impeached him, so that's good enough. Don't put him on the ballot. He doesn't get the electoral votes. You can't revote. Joe Biden wins. Joe Biden wins. He steps down. Kamala Harris is president. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Let's play the tape back in January 2 years. You tell me how crazy it sounds. I don't think it's that crazy after what I've seen. No one seems to care that Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, all these states, just didn't abide by the laws of their state legislatures in conducting an election because, well, it was in pursuit of the greater good. Speaking of pursuing the greater good, you're wondering, how did I segue that in? Chuck Todd hosted his last show on Sunday after being pushed out as the host of Meet the Press. This is the interesting thing, though. He was doing a little farewell-y thing at the end with a group of his folks, and he started to talk to them about what he thought his mission was. And he said it was his job to explain Washington to America and America to Washington. What a narcissistic elitist. I call that Chuck-splaining. It's Chuck-splaining. You're too stupid out there to understand how this here government works. So you know what we're going to do? I, Chuck, have to explain all of this to you. And then I will go out and translate it back to these folks in Washington who couldn't bother hang out with you folks. I know that's true of NBC because after the 2016 election, I actually met with senior NBC executives who realized they got it wrong and said, we need to go out into the country more and visit these people, these Trump people. Maybe like go to a Walmart or something or to a fair. Is that where you all hang out? They were so disgusted. And that's the thing, is that Chuck believes that his role as moderator was to explain to us what's going on, to give us his personal partisan point of view. He never understood the role of moderator. It's to hold officials accountable, to ask them the tough questions. Let them tell us what they think and let the viewers make a decision. We don't need Chuck Todd and his left-wing agenda to filter all of the ideas and policies. We're smart enough, Chuck. But you went bye-bye. And it's interesting. As much as I don't think he ever stood the next role, his other role, I do think it'll be interesting to see whether his successor, Kristen Welker, in her comment, she said she wanted to be the reporter that she's always been. I wish her luck. I hope she is. I don't have a lot of hope, but I wish her well. I hope that she gets back to holding people accountable, asking them tough questions, let them answer those questions, and we, the viewer, decide whether we agree with them or not. It's not her job. It's never been Chuck's job to tell us what to think. Unfortunately, that's what he thought it was. Anyway, the Biden economy, as you guys know, Bidenomics, as they like to call it, is a scary thing. If you're trying to figure out your future, where to invest, where to put your money, and you want to secure a piece of it, there's only one place to go, and you've heard me talk about it before, Bishop Gold Group. They are America's premier precious metals company. I've known these guys for a while. They've been extremely supportive of me. I love how they do business. And in this ever-changing landscape, interest rates going up, questions about crypto, all this, I mean, everything that's happening, the folks at Bishop Gold Group can give you their time-tested advice, their tangible assets in gold and other precious metals, and bring a level of certainty to this crazy world that we're living right now in this Bidenomics. They are extremely trustworthy, knowledgeable. So if you're a seasoned investor just starting out, they've got a range of options. If you're looking to invest just on your own, if you want to transfer an IRA, I mean, whether you're talking gold, silver, platinum, and it's amazing because they can send you the coins and they're not very big. You hold on to them in a safe place or they'll take care of it for you. But these guys understand how to achieve your financial goals. So go to Bishop Gold Group. You'll get the transparency and the integrity that they live by every day. So please call 844-984-1616. 844-984-1616, or go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean. You'll get a special promotion to start your journey with them. Again, bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean. All right. Well, as I mentioned earlier today is the 22nd remembrance of 9/11. I wanted to have a discussion about where we are, and I thought no better person than the gentleman we're about to sit down with. Zachary Bell is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who served 2 tours in Afghanistan. And he's got an Instagram account called Veteran with a Sign. Zachary, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So
I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate what you do. Let me ask you, you first went to Afghanistan in 2008. How big of a role was 9/11 in you joining the military?
I mean, without exaggeration, it was the catalyst event of my life and a generation. It's hard to even state or connect to anything like that in these past few years or any before or after, but like it is the moment that is like seared into my brain of when I felt this call to action, this call to serve, and this desire to want to defend my nation.
And how many folks that you served with, especially during your deployments, were in a similar situation where they had joined largely because of 9/11?
I would say it was like almost all of them. Like I remember we had, I was in the infantry unit, so there's like 30 people to a platoon, and 99% of them almost. I mean, I know some of my leadership had come from like recruiting, and they said pretty much from like 2006 to 2012, they didn't even leave the offices. People just showed up like the day they turned 18, and it was crazy. And like it was a whole wave of people that wanted to serve the military, which was just in time for the troop surge in Afghanistan, which is what I was a part of.
Do you think that while you were there, there was this sense that that what you were doing was making the country safer, that we were actually righting a wrong from 9/11?
All I can speak towards is my own experience. I know on my first deployment, we were in this town called Marja. I mean, not Marja. We were in this town called Garmser in Helmand Province, and there were schools that had been abandoned, and it had been the site of public executions for the Taliban because they didn't want people to gain knowledge and to learn different things. So that was where they held most of their executions in that area. But we were there. We were able to change that environment for them, and the safety and security was so dramatically different than when we got there in the summer of 2008, that like it felt like a better place. Like every day they would come up to us, say how much they appreciated us there, how much they liked going to school, how much safer they felt, and it felt like we were actually doing something for like a greater good.
So what do you think the lessons we should take from both Iraq and Afghanistan from in terms of making us safer in combating terrorism?
I mean, I'm just a lowly infantryman, so
Well,
I wasn't
I
in
don't know
naval
that that's
intelligence like some.
no, but
Um,
first of all, I appreciate your humbleness, but
yeah,
if it wasn't for people like you um, that go out there and do that, I would just I don't think lowly is the right word for that ever. You sacrificed, and so many of the other folks that went with you did.
hmm
And I think it's important to understand because somebody's got to go, and you did. And so
hmm
for you to, I think it's important if you're going to go do that, lay so much on the line that
hmm
there's a sense of fulfillment that the mission is worth it. And that's what I'm getting at here is did we learn lessons from there? Did we make the country safer?
I mean, during that time, that from like 2007 to 11, just it felt like we were making a significant impact. I mean, just in the time my first tour, there was a camp called Camp Dwyer, and I remember it was a solar shade. And when I came back in like late 2009 to 2010, it had Wi-Fi, and so like there was a significant buildup in those years. And I'm not a military strategist. I'm not like schooled up in the ways of the things we've done. Um, I I always knew we were going to pull out of Afghanistan. I am legitimately surprised that we didn't maintain some type of presence, similar to how we've done in every other
Right.
conflict we've been in. Like I thought we were going to keep the bases there, to be completely honest. In
You
the
mean
same
because it would have
way,
made sense?
it would have made sense. So there was even a Netflix like TV show about this. How in Germany after World War II, we sent cops just from all over, like the best cops we could find, so they could police and stop any like uprising. Because when you have these types of moments where authoritarian powers are moved, it creates a huge power vacuum and opportunity for all sorts of corruption to happen. And like I honestly don't know why we didn't keep Bagram, was a big air base, and the Kandahar airfield base, just in order to maintain some type of presence, safety, and security to ensure that all the things we had done prior to that moment weren't for naught. So
Yeah, and I didn't want to go there right away, but since you brought it up, because I agree actually for not
yeah,
just from Afghanistan, but strategically as a check on China. I mean, the weapons that we've
yes,
left, there's now the Pakistani officials are saying that they've fallen in the hands of the Pakistani Taliban. But
hmm
knowing that you deployed twice
hmm
and so many people paid the ultimate price, do you look at how do you view how we withdrew in Afghanistan in terms of the overall mission that you went out there, all these good things that you talk about that had
hmm
happened, and then you see the withdrawal the way that the Biden administration did it. How did that impact your thinking?
oh, it was, and it still is gut wrenching. Like without a doubt, um the single handed like most greatest thing I've seen, hopefully thus far in my lifetime, of like our foreign policy being enacted. Again, like I think we should have maintained a presence there. We have precedent for Vietnam, Korea, Germany, and Japan. We still have bases there for these exact reasons in order to maintain some type of posture in the global safety and security of the world. My first mission was trying to learn more about what happened, and I've actually been able to become good friends with one of the Marines who was there, who has testified in front of Congress. His name is Tyler Vargas Andrews. He was there on the ground. He was a sniper. He was injured in the blast. He lost one of his arms and one of his legs, and he's made it his life's mission to talk about this incident and to hold people accountable for what happened. Because, I mean, from his perspective, firsthand knowledge, someone who was running a sniper team, who had eyes on the enemy and had intelligence coming in that could have prevented the thing. He won't let that be forgotten. And I mean, he's someone that I'm proud to know and proud to see how he has made it his mission to make sure that this is not forgotten.
But what does that do to morale and recruiting? If you're sitting there saying, I mean, when you went in, you talk about what I think you said 99% of the people that you were deployed with got in because they felt this desire to serve, and so when you see what happens now, I just gotta imagine that impacts both morale and secondly recruiting.
Yeah, I mean it. I think it. I think we won't really know the implications of it till many years from now, the full implications. But like in the near, close, and far like targets, like when looking at it that way, like it's evident. I mean, I know people who are in recruiting who they're having the hardest times they ever had to just fulfill the numbers or their goals they have. Morale seems to be all over the place, branch to branch. It just seems that there's a complete lack of cohesion between like um, what the military is now and what it's supposed to do. Like in general, the military as a whole is a war fighting organization. And, as we're no longer in a war, we have to prepare for the next one. And it seems that we've lost track of that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Would you feel confident if somebody said, Zachary, I follow you on Instagram. I'd like to join the Marine Corps like you did. Would you tell them to join or not?
Yeah, I would tell him to be an officer for sure, is what I would tell him. Like I am a first generation college graduate. Um, I was able to get a bachelor's, I was able to get a master's, I was able to see different parts of the world and have different experiences that were not available to me otherwise. It taught me a lot about the world and understanding. Like I'm a person that is eternally grateful for the opportunities I had to be able to travel and see different perspectives and different cultures, because like otherwise you're just kind of dense, in my opinion. Like I don't feel like our country's not perfect, but in my opinion, we're doing the best we can. And there are other countries that I've visited outside of Afghanistan and seen things that are like legitimately scary to me, and just the access to change and the ability to like we're one of the only countries in the world where you can like literally change a whole generation just like because of like education experience in your jobs. Like you can literally go from poverty to like having all sorts of different things no one ever thought possible. I mean, I'm living proof of that. Everyone in my family was working class and didn't have any future beyond that. And like now because I've gone to college and different things like that, there's all these like metrics and stuff that support that like my children's lives will be better and all sorts of different things like that. I mean, it is one of the greatest honors I've ever had to serve my country. But I also understand if they don't want to do it, because I don't know, it seems like we've forgotten who we are as a country, and I think we need to kind of get back to that.
So let's get to that. You started this Instagram site called Veteran with a Sign.
Yes, sir.
One of the
Very
signs
clever.
that I saw that you have says, "We always seem to have enough to pay for war, but never enough to cover the cost." What do you mean by that specifically?
I mean, we seem to have an endless pile of money to fund different global conflicts that we are not involved in. And every time, like the most recent thing that's happened to Veterans Affairs and Benefits is the passing of the PACT Act. The PACT Act is the first step in getting, not mainly, just the majority of Vietnam veterans and different veterans who have toxic exposures, the benefits and treatment that they deserve, right? It's not perfect. No bill is and no thing is, but like it's a step in the right direction. And it's taken years for this to happen. Like we've known about toxic exposures. We know burn pits are bad. Like everybody knows that. But like every time it comes time to like take care of veterans or like really understand the cost of war, we seem to pull back. But we'll send trillions to different countries to support their conflicts all over the globe, and that money just appears like as if magic. But whenever the VA asks for like the smallest amount of a budget increase or like understanding all different things associated with that well seems to run dry the most often is been my experience. So
and so as I said, you've got one of them behind you there saying that you're worth fighting for. Why did you start this Instagram account, Veteran with a Sign?
I mean, I served from 2007 to 11. I've during that time I had so many different experiences. It was really tough, and I missed my one daughter being born, and I left 2 days after another one was born, and it was really tough. So I was just trying to reintegrate. And one of the things I did while I was going to college was working at nonprofit organizations, trying to help our community best I could. And I've done that for a while, worked in for-profit, nonprofit healthcare. But during the pandemic, I I've always done writing as a creative outlet. And I don't know, I thought I could make like a little goofy thing where we could like laugh and, have like nostalgia and then like kind of start conversation and community. And it was really just like in my office, just being like, okay, I'll try this, and asking my wife to take photos of me. And it slowly over time just turned into something to where like now I want to try and speak truth to power about like veterans, military issues and stuff, the types of things that we're facing in order to try and like change the conversation. Like, I think we as a community are really strong. We just need to be better about the way in which we present ourselves and the way in which we speak. So like for me, it was just like, what's the simplest thing I can do to get a message across? And so it was just a cardboard sign, and there was a lot of it that I had in my house. I just started writing on it. And that one is actually from the Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major Grinston. He signed it when I was able to interview him, and I believe it was 2021. And so that was one he held, and it was really incredible. He's the 16th Sergeant Major of the Army, and was true American, and someone I look up to a lot, actually. Even as a Marine, I got to say I love a good soldier.
Yeah, I think you're gonna get some flack from the other Marines saying nice things.
Well, if the Marine Corps called me, I'll show up. So that's my deal.
What do you? And I don't mean to turn political, but we had there's a lot of concern about how President Biden handled this Medal of Honor ceremony last week.
Yes, I talked about it. Yeah.
And what did you think of it?
If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't believe it. Just to be completely honest, and I made a very like truncated version of the video. Actually, no, I didn't. I uploaded the whole thing. So it's a ceremony. He left before he puts the medal on the recipient, right. And he leaves like literally just jets like right before the benediction, and that was highly unusual. I mean, just from my perspective, what I could see, even the audience and the press corps that's there, they seem somewhat taken back by it as well. And so my goal is like, listen, I just want to talk about like how cool this guy is, Captain Taylor, like Lieutenant Taylor at the time, like what he did, because it is crazy, like what he did. Right. He was coming home from like a security patrol. He gets a call from our reconnaissance team. Hey, we're surrounded. He goes in there, puts himself in harm's way, runs dry on ammo, runs dry on fuel, tells the reconnaissance team to jet the other way. He pulls the enemy away with brights to act like he's picking them up, dips out, gets them, has nowhere on his helicopter for them, and then picks up the reconnaissance team, says, grab onto the skids, grab onto the rocket pods, we're out of here. Like, that is an incredible story, and that is uncommon valor at its highest level. I think it would have been nice if he would have stayed around. Thank
you for sharing your story with us today and the work that you're doing. I urge people to go to Instagram, Veteran with a Sign, and continue to heed the messages that you're sending out. I really applaud everything you're doing to get the word out.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I enjoyed that discussion with Zachary. I appreciate his time. And on this day that we remember 22 years ago, the attack that happened on our country, it's important to remember whether we're a safer country, whether we've learned our lessons from that day. So take some time today. Remember the sacrifice that the people at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, Shanksville, all those folks made. The heroes from that day, the first responders, the people who are still suffering, and then the people like Zachary that went forward after that to make sure that we never had a 9/11 again. It's tough 22 years later because so many people have forgotten. And we promised ourselves that day as a country we would never forget. So let's do our part. Share this with somebody. Tell them to watch it. Tell them about that day so that we don't forget. We remember to keep vigilant and safe. Starting tomorrow, Congress is back, though. The House comes back in, and I think two big questions are going to dominate the conversation. To impeach or not to impeach? The clock is ticking. I think Republicans are forcing Speaker McCarthy's hand, number one. And then number two, we have 20 days left before there needs to be an agreement to continue the government funding, or we come to a government shutdown on October 1st. We are going to give you our take on this all week long. Stay tuned. A lot of big questions. We will break it all down with you. A lot of important guests will be coming on to share their perspective and insight as to what's happening. But this is going to be a very, very big week in Washington And I think they're closely linked together because Speaker McCarthy's fate is going to be tied to what actually happens. Anyway, tomorrow we've got a great discussion with Mike Huckabee. You're not going to want to miss that. Thanks for joining us and kicking off your week with us. Let us remember to never forget what happened on 9/11. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.